the Daniel Cleland podcast.
We are live with the man of the hour, Dr. Dennis Mckenna. Round two on, so we changed the name of the podcast from the Daniel Cleland podcast because nobody cares about Daniel Cleland. and we changed it to Business, Life, and Ayahuasca with Daniel Cleland. So it's a little more dialed into the subject matter. So today we can talk about business, life, and ayahuasca. If that sounds good to you, Dr. McKenna.
Well, I think, thank you, Daniel. It's good to be back. I think that the name change is a good idea. Yeah, I mean, people care about you, Daniel. Don't think people don't care about you, but sometimes they're wondering, well, who is Daniel Cleland? And
yeah,
now you can tell them I'm the guy behind Business, Life, and Ayahuasca. Also happen to be the founder of the Soltara Healing Center, which is people know about that. So, and it's getting a higher profile and really a lot of good notice, I think. So that's great.
Yeah. Have you seen any recent good notice in the media or anywhere else? Have you heard anything about Soltara recently?
Yeah, I think so. But I can't remember exactly. But I thought you got a heads up in the New York Times recently, didn't you? There was some article there about it that mentioned Soltara.
Yeah. That was I think that was about a year ago. But we just recently actually got a mention on Jimmy Kimmel.
Well, that's huge. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Megan Fox?
Yes.
Megan Fox, the actress who was the star of Transformers back in the day, and her partner Machine Gun Kelly. They were recently at Soltara a couple months ago.
Oh, really?
And Megan Fox was just on Jimmy Kimmel being interviewed actually by Arsenio Hall like a week ago, something like that. Actually, maybe even less than a week ago. And she went into some detail about her experience. She didn't mention Soltara. She mentioned Costa Rica. She mentioned ayahuasca. She went into detail of her experience. It was interesting to hear her perspective that there was, that Soltara was like this rugged, jungly place, like not glamorous at all. And you had there was
she just has no idea.
Right, exactly. Right. So yeah, that maybe from someone coming from a Hollywood mansion, right? But
exactly.
But we were plastered all over the news in Costa Rica. I mean, like every news channel in Costa Rica talked about Megan Fox coming to Costa Rica to drink.
Well, that's
ayahuasca.
fantastic. That's great publicity. Yeah, wonderful. Glad to hear it.
So, so you've, I guess it's been what? I think the first time we talked was like back in October or something. The first time we did a podcast. So it's been 6 or 8 months, and it's time for a check-in, man. So how have you been? How have you been in Canada for the past like 6 to 9 months?
Well, I've been pretty good. Like everybody else, we're just dealing with the pandemic here. So even though it's been 6 to 9 months, I'm still basically, things are lightening up locally. They're opening things up. I still can't cross the border, but they're planning to lift those restrictions in the next month or so. So I've really had to kind of get used to spending a lot of time in my basement, Daniel, frankly, which is actually okay. I mean, I was ahead of the curve before COVID hit, in the sense that I've been working virtually for 10 years. So this is not that much different than what I was doing, even earlier than that. So it's getting to be kind of a drag. I mean, I would like to go somewhere, but on the other hand, I'm content to stay here as well. And we'll see what happens. Maybe in August, September, we'll be able to do some traveling. I'm thinking about even taking a driving trip to Colorado to visit my relatives. That's where I'm from. So haven't seen them in a coon's age. So I thought maybe that'd make a nice trip. But whether it'll happen, I don't know. In the meantime, I got plenty going on here. I'm not sitting around wondering what to do. I've got lots of things going on. You know how it is. You're perpetually overbooked yourself. One of these people that works 24/7 and then some. I can't match that, but I'm staying busy and off the streets, and I'm sure the streets are grateful for that. So life is good.
So how long has it been since you actually kind of left British Columbia?
I left British Columbia. The last time I left BC was February 2020.
Wow.
Just before they got serious about the lockdown, and the reason uh, I was in New York in February 2020, actually for the U.S. premiere of Reconnect, which is Brian Rose's film.
I
That
was there with you.
That's right. You were there with me. So that's the last time I've been out of the country.
Wow. And your wife is not getting too sick of you or anything?
Uh, not so much. I mean, she has done. It's not the central uh, preoccupation of her life, unlike me. I think the central preoccupation of her life is probably food. So I'm a lucky man in that sense. She's an excellent cook, and she keeps me fed maybe a little bit too well. And uh, and she's a plant person, but she's not so much into psychedelics. She's a gardener, an herbalist, all of those things.
Oh,
But
sounds like a
we
good
get along.
synergy.
She recognizes the importance of psychedelics, and we have done psychedelics, including ayahuasca in the past. But she's not so much into it anymore.
So you mentioned you have a whole bunch of things going on, bunch of different projects. And by the way, I appreciate your generosity by insinuating that I'm a hard worker. But you might be surprised. I do high leverage things, but they're in low quantities. So, but anyways, you mentioned that you've been working on a lot of things. So what are you working on?
Well, a number of things. We've been doing these online events. I mean, the original idea behind the McKenna Academy is that we were going to do retreats and conferences and that sort of thing in physical space. And then COVID, radically changed our business model, basically. So we've had to pivot and go virtual. And we've been putting different events online. We had Brian Morarescu, the guy that wrote the Immortality Key. I don't know if you know that book, but it's got a lot of attention. This is looking back at Eleusis. He's a classic scholar, basically, and in I think 1978, a book came out called The Road to Eleusis. And Eleusis was one of the Mediterranean mystery religions that probably used psychedelics. In 78, there was a book published by Carl Ruck, who is a classic scholar, Albert Hoffman, the discoverer of LSD, and R. Gordon Wasson, the guy who rediscovered the magic mushroom cults. And they wrote this book called The Road to Eleusis. And the thesis was that in the mystery religions, people would travel to Eleusis. Everybody who was anybody in Greek society, whether aristocratic or not, would make a pilgrimage at some time in their life to Eleusis. and they would consume this sacrament, this beverage called the kukion, in this darkened chamber, and they would have an amazing experience. And, obviously a psychedelic experience, right? Although they don't like to admit that, but that's what was going on. This was a psychedelic sacrament, and in the early book, they theorized that this was prepared from ergot. It was actually prepared
Hmm.
from barley that had been infected with ergot, and very hard thesis to prove, but they had they had what evidence there was. It was a reasonable idea. Well, Brian uh, kind of took up where they left off and wrote this book called The Immortality Key, which looked at the historical roots of not only the Eleusinian mystery school, but the Dionysian mystery schools around, Dionysus, that whole, which supposedly, the sacraments that were used in the Dionysian cults were wine. But these were spiked wines. These were not not what you're drinking for dinner.
Mm.
These were the wine was a basis for different plant ingredients, which probably included uh, psychedelics of one kind or another, and possibly nightshades and so on. So and then these mystery cults were the precursors to Christianity. Early Christianity was also happening in this area. A couple. Well, the Eleusinian cult was about uh, lasted 1,000 years. Starting in around 500 BC and more or less ending around the end of the fifth century AD. Uh, but in this same period, the first 2 centuries after Christ was, Christ's birth, or postulated when it was, there was these, the early precursors of Christianity were also taking sacraments, and the whole Last Supper idea. And again, these were most likely spiked sacraments of some kind. And so that you kind of cross over into heresy, because, the whole idea, oh my God, the actual Eucharist was psychedelic, is heresy if you happen to be a uh, you know, conventional Catholic. This is an appalling idea. But in fact, this is probably what was happening. So Brian, through scholarship, essentially, a little bit of chemistry, a little bit of archaeochemistry, uh, but more just drawing parallels and so on, wrote this very interesting book called The Immortality Key. Do I have it easily grabbable here? I have it here. I don't know exactly which one it was. Anyway, worth looking at. Worth looking at. So we did that, and then we planned some additional events. We're going to do my brother's book, The Food of the Gods, has been reprinted earlier this year, so we're planning to do a one-day symposium sometime this fall. We're not sure exactly when, on the stoned ape theory, which
Interesting.
was kind of the thesis of Food of the Gods. Well, there's new information now about that, and that support the idea. So it goes from, a completely wacko notion to plausible. In fact, more than likely. and,
Huh.
and so we're gonna talk about that. I may be able to persuade Michael Pollan to get on that. So that would be a great thing. And then we've got these different projects under what we're long-term projects under what we're calling BioGnosis. In other words, knowledge plus gnosis, bio plus gnosis, or sometimes the Knowledge Preservation Project. and these are focused mainly in Iquitos, and we're working with Juan Ruiz, who is a colleague of mine that I've worked with for over 40 years, and he's the curator of the herbarium at the University of at UNAP, at the University of Iquitos, and we're trying to document his knowledge. That's the first step of this long-term project. We're trying to document his knowledge of the medicinal plants of the area, which is tremendous, which is vast, but he never writes anything down. So he's one of these folks about which they say when a medicine man dies, it's like a library has burned down. And Juan is that library. And he's not getting any younger. So we want to document through a series of interviews and so on. We want to document what he knows, and we want to actually create, to the extent that that can be done in a documentary. So we're working on a short piece, but then we're hoping through that to get additional funding to do a series on sort of on ethnomedicine in the Amazon, or traditional medicine in the Amazon, and kind of a series that'll kind of create a snapshot of what is going on in the sort of post-COVID 21st century, post-ayahuasca tourism, all of that. What is the contemporary landscape, if you will, of traditional medicine that's being practiced around Iquitos and Pucallpa and so on? So that's the second phase of our project. And then the third phase, much more ambitious, and we may not get there, but we're going to try, is to work with Juan on the herbarium, and through him form a relationship with the university, because it's basically administered through the university. But we want to digitize the herbarium. What do I mean by that? We want to scan all the specimens in the herbarium and put them on an online database and make them accessible to basically anybody with the need, researchers primarily, but it would be an open source database. And we want to make that available as a world-class resource for anyone doing research on Amazonian plants. So that's a long-term goal and kind of aspirational. That's going to take 2 or 3 years to get that done, and probably, it's going to cost over $1 million. I don't know if we'll be able to raise the funds for it, but that's our aspiration anyway.
Couple of interesting projects you've got working there. Couple of things that came to mind. One is, obviously you and your friends, your colleagues, are really good writers, and if you're trying to capture this knowledge from Juan Ruiz, you can probably do that yourselves. But I'm aware of a company called Scribe, and the theory behind this company is that Jesus Christ or Plato or any of the other philosophers all had a scribe with them to translate their ideas and translate their knowledge into the scrolls, right? And so if the Academy is committed to extracting all of that knowledge, yet doesn't really want to put the time and effort into writing it out, well, then perhaps this company might be able to help. Just as a helpful hint and tip that you might want to engage at some point. Second point that I actually was planning to ask you about anyways is you're involved a lot more in Peru than what I am at this point. The friends I do have down there paint somewhat of a bleak picture for how things have turned out throughout the advent of the lockdowns more than anything, the pandemic, the death. I think Peru at one point became the single leading death per capita country in the world due to COVID. But not only that, there's been a lot of economic strife that has come from this, and a lot of civil unrest, let's say, because people don't like being confined and they don't necessarily have the resources to be confined for long periods of time.
Right.
And then, of course, you've lost all of the business, right? The tourism business and the ayahuasca business and everything else. So what that's just my broad understanding, but according to you and your associates that maybe have a little more intimate knowledge of what's going on down there, what is going on down there?
Well, it is more or less as you say. It's impacted. Of course, it's impacted the ayahuasca tourism business greatly, and tourism in general. And because people don't have widespread, easy access to the vaccines, these COVID keeps, it will start to fade away, and then it will come back as these new variants show up. It's a pretty rough situation down there, actually. A lot of economic stress, and some groups are like what I know from retreat centers. Some of them are surviving pretty well. They've been able to adjust. Others have not. And it is not made any easier by the fact that it's hard to get in and out of there, just like everywhere. If you go like as you know, in Canada right now, I can leave Canada. Problem is getting back. But that's going to be lifted pretty soon. Right now, if I left Canada, even if I just went to the States, I'd have to quarantine on the way back. And they monitor it. And you can't just say I'm going to do it and then not do it because they track you. But
Like
it's created a lot of economic disruption in Iquitos. But life goes on too. People are trying to do what they can, and that's we're all looking for a day when this virus is not going to rule our lives, but it's going to be around a while, and we're just going to have to adapt to it. So we'll see what happens. Fortunately, well, my friend Juan Ruiz, the curator, I mean, he had COVID, and I don't know. I mean, he didn't have access to a vaccine or anything, but then he's a botanist, so he knows plant medicines, and he said he was able to go to the marketplace and get appropriate medicines and make it easier for him. But he's impacted like everybody else. He lost two of his siblings, two sisters.
Oh my goodness.
He told me that faculty members at the university, about 30 of them have died. So yeah, it's a bleak picture, actually.
Wow. Have you gotten your vaccination yet?
Yes, I am fully vaccinated. I have two Pfizer vaccines.
And your wife, I assume, as well?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, it took a while. We had to wait, but we do have that. So I feel better about that. I mean, I wouldn't worry about traveling. Uh, you know, and basically I do not understand. If you look at the epidemiology in the States right now, of course, you look at the States and everything's crazy, right? I mean, on all levels. But if you look at what's going on epidemiologically, I mean, the people that are getting COVID now are the people that haven't gotten vaccinated. Nobody else is getting it. 99% of the people in the hospital or the infections are unvaccinated people in these sort of red states where the whole thing has become politicized, and it's almost like I mean, which is inconceivable why there should be a pushback against this. I mean, it just makes sense. The vaccines are safe, they work, but a lot of people at least in the on the right side, the red states, they are pushing back, and so that's creating problems for everybody because you know the fewer people are vaccinated, the more chances there are for these variants to show up, and then these variants show up, and then it's very disruptive. So this is crazy. I mean, you yourself, when you came to Costa Rica to set up the Soltara, uh, you probably didn't figure you'd have to deal with this, you know.
It's a
And
black swan event. It's a once in a century black swan event, and maybe maybe from this point on, it's once in a 10-year black swan event. This type of disruption, who knows? I mean, we're moving into a crazy world, but yeah, we did not anticipate this to happen.
yeah,
I mean, I don't think anybody, I anticipated something to happen because something always does happen,
right,
and it had been, 10 years since the most recent big crisis being, the financial meltdown of 2008, 2009. So I was really aggressively trying to prepare for something, but COVID did sneak up pretty fast, and it was absolute, and it was rapid in its delivery,
yeah.
right?
But
So
Soltera is an example. You were able to deal with it. You made the right moves at the right time, and Soltera's doing okay, right? But
yeah,
then in Costa Rica, the pandemic is they have a good public health service, so I
yeah,
guess you don't have the rates of infection that you have in South America. They're more on top of it, right? And people are getting vaccinated in Costa Rica.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's also, it's a country that has really one major city, right?
Hmm.
And most of the concentrations of infection is in the dense population centers, like in San Jose. A lot of the country is, in contrast, spread out. So you've got a
Hmm.
lot of people living with adequate space, and a lot of most of the country in this tropical setting live in open air buildings, right? They
Hmm.
live in homes that have, screened in windows. They don't enclose themselves. They don't have air conditioning. So, there's that being said, recently there was this third wave in Costa Rica that was very punishing to the health system. They have I think 1,000 intensive care unit beds, and they were all like occupied. It was saturated, and then they 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 put some additional restrictions, and that was right after Semana Santa, right? Semana Santa last year. Semana Santa, for those who don't know, is the summer holiday in Latin America, pretty much, right? It's
Hmm.
like you've got
Hmm.
Christmas, which is the
Hmm.
start of summer, and you've got Semana Santa, which is kind of the end of summer
Okay.
vacations, anyways, right?
Hmm.
So Semana Santa, well, it's Easter, right? It's the same time. It's just Christmas and Easter, the two religious holidays of the year. And so last year, Semana Santa was completely like shut off. Like it was completely dead here, and that's one of the big economic generators for the tourism business. That's kind of like the end of the high season,
Hmm.
and a lot of tourism companies depend on that to survive. And so last year they turned it off completely. This year they let everyone just have at it. Like there was Semana Santa was wide open,
Hmm.
and everybody went out to the beaches, everybody hanging out with their families, and having a good time. And then I think, probably as anticipated, there was a big wave of COVID cases right after that.
Right.
And then so after Semana Santa happened, they threw down, like, I think, a 2-week lockdown or something like that. But contrary to most other countries, a 2-week lockdown actually lasted 2 weeks, and then they
Right. Right.
they opened it up
Right.
again. Um, but yeah, I think, there's a few different factors of why Costa Rica fared okay. It's right about on par with Canada. I've seen like the charts in deaths per capita due to COVID. It's right
Mhm.
about like the last chart I saw was, I think Canada was just above Costa Rica. So pretty much on par. Um, but yeah, you mentioned a comment there earlier about some crazy stuff going on in the States. You're actually from United States. You moved to Canada. I think I recall saying because you didn't want to live in a country run by crazy people. So,
That was a factor. That was a factor. Yes. Yeah. And
so
now look what's happened. So yeah, we do not regret that we moved up here in 2019. We kind of could see it coming even before the election, and but it's been a long-term goal of ours to move to Canada. My wife is Canadian, and
I
I
see.
dragged her off to the States 38 years ago, and she never forgave me. So finally, we decided that here we are, and we're grateful to be here. I mean, I think that something that maybe characterizes Costa Rica and Canada that is in contrast to the States is there's more of a sense of civic responsibility. I think that
Mm,
people in Canada, there's not we don't have the political and ideological divisions in Canada. Of course, we have. I mean, there's plenty of back and forth, but it's not gotten to the toxic level that it has in the States. And I think that people generally understand that vaccines is common sense, and there's a sense of the public good. What will benefit the people at that level. In the States, everybody is selfish. It's like my freedom. My freedom. Nobody's going to make me wear a mask. I don't need any goddamn vaccine. Nobody can tell me what to do. My body, my freedom. Interestingly, ironically, the people that are out there shouting that, these are the same people that don't want a woman to have the right to terminate a pregnancy if that's her choice. So there's a bit of cognitive dissonance there. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance. And in general, I think there's just more sense of the common good in Canada, in a sense of we're all in this together. You don't get that in the States. I don't know how it
mm.
goes in Costa Rica, but I sense it's more like Canada than the States.
Yeah. In that sense, yes, I think what you see here is do I want to say obedience or cooperation? Maybe a
Let's
sense
call it
of
cooperation.
yeah. I would say definitely a sense of there's a press state release or a statement to the press by the well, there's a national conversation, let's call it. There's a national
Exactly.
conversation. It comes from one source, and that's the house of the president. And people generally, follow for the most part what is said. Um they can be convinced to put the public good on a high level, related to their own personal pleasure or freedom or action or convenience. So yeah, maybe in that sense. Um, I haven't been to Canada in 2 years. So
Mhm.
I haven't gone because I don't want to quarantine. And I was actually really upset with the move that Canada chose to make of putting people in a government facility for 3 days upon arrival. I thought that was a little bit extreme, and I didn't want to participate in that. So I actually haven't been home, and I won't be going home until the quarantines are lifted. And yes, I did get vaccinated, so I'm not trying to be the selfish guy, but at the same time, I don't really, yeah, I don't like the monitoring, as you said.
Sure.
They force you to quarantine, and then they calling your house and making sure that you're home, and you can't even walk around the block. And, if you're not home, they come over to your house if you don't answer the phone. And then it's like what I've heard was like a $750,000 fine or something like that if
No,
you break
no. Well,
quarantine.
it varies. It varies depending on how bad the wave is and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean those are pretty extreme kind of things. But uh, I don't know. I mean, what else can they do? At least uh, you know I think we're going to get through that. I think these restrictions are going to be lifted. But
Yeah.
for the same reason, Daniel, that you didn't go to Canada, I didn't go to the States. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, all right, I can deal with this. This isn't so terrible. I mean, I think about in a way how lucky we are that we compared to say Peru, where the whole dynamic is different. People don't have they can't afford to not go to work. They can't afford
Yeah.
to do these types of things, so it's much harder on them. And I don't even know if there are vaccines available in Peru even at this point.
Yeah.
Did you say you did get vaccinated in Costa Rica?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I went up to actually not in Costa Rica. I Costa Rica is doing it in a phased in approach based on risk
Hmm.
profiles, right? So at first it was like plus 65, then it was plus 50, and then it was
Right.
18 to 50, 18 to 49 with risk factors, comorbidities and stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
then I don't think they've moved into the just total free availability. However, I went up to Miami and I just walked into a pharmacy and got a vaccine for like $50 or $70 or whatever. I got the single dose vaccine.
Which one?
Johnson and Johnson.
Johnson and Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
good
like
for you, Daniel. That's good. You're an example to the rest of us. And I think it's important.
nothing happened. There some people, of course, you have a lot of conversations with I've got a lot of diverse friends, especially people I've talked to in the podcast, and you get a lot of opinions or a lot of anecdotal experiences.
Hmm.
Actually, the my podcast manager, a good friend of mine, he got the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, and he was like really sick for about 48 hours.
Hmm.
He said he's never been that sick before, body aches and fever, and just, so he was telling me that as I was in Miami. We went out to do a podcast in Miami, and so like you hear that and it's like, okay, well, there's a small percentage of people that have really strong reactions. Okay. But at the same time, just get it over with and have the vaccination card in case it ever comes up. And also just not have to worry about actually getting COVID or not actually getting, dying from it, even though the risk is small. It's like, it's much smaller if you have the vaccine. So,
Exactly.
I just went and did it. And even though some people I know had reactions, or you heard about it on social media, you heard about it and from other people through the grapevine, even the people in the pharmacy said I might get a sore arm or something like that. But I got a sore arm for about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then it was literally nothing. I might have been a little bit sleepy on the plane when I traveled that same afternoon. But yeah, it was not a thing.
Yeah.
So
Same with me. There was basically no reaction. Like you say, sore arm for an hour with both injections. So it was nothing. It was no big deal, and I feel good. But I think
and now you're safe.
yeah, well, yeah, until a variant comes along that gets around this one, but I don't think that's going to happen for a while. But it's interesting, as a social phenomenon to watch how this virus has, you know, disrupted everything really, all societies, and and the differences in the way that different countries are responding to it. I mean,
Yes.
the U.S. is kind of the worst example. Maybe Brazil is a little bit worse than they are, but it's just interesting to sort of look at the kind of the national mindset regarding these things, and countries like Canada that have a strong sense of civic duty. I think they do better, but then there is always, I think, with these governments, there's always the tendency to overreach, and you know,
Yes.
and then people resent that, But
Yes.
uh, this is the new normal, Daniel. We're just going to have to get used to this. The COVID. In some ways, I think the COVID is uh, it's the gentlest pandemic that we should expect. I think that it's the first of many, and it may be that the 21st century is going to be a lot about that. I mean, well, I don't know. We could go off into some fairly dark places here, but there's a lot of bad stuff going on right now.
Do you
On
think this is the start of the apocalypse? You often
the
have these
start of the apocalypse. Are you kidding? We're in the middle of the apocalypse.
We're in the middle of the apocalypse. So what does
But
apocalypse mean to you?
it's a slow apocalypse. I mean, it's not like there are different kinds of apocalypses or apocalypti. Is that a word? I don't know. I mean, there's the fast and the medium fast and the slow. Is one way to think of it. And the fast is, some global cataclysm that just completely resets everything, screws everything up. I mean, the obvious example of that would be like a massive asteroid impact, which I don't think is happening. They track these things well enough that they can pretty much tell us that there won't be a significant asteroid impact in the foreseeable decades. Of course, that always means there may be something that comes from you know when they're not looking that happens, but I don't worry about that. I think we're in the middle of a uh, kind of a. I think we've been in the middle of a slow apocalypse for a while, but now it's accelerating. In a sense, we're seeing all the strains on the societal systems, the environmental systems, the I mean, if you simply look at not only the states but really all over the world, I mean, climate change is happening, and it's happening fast, and it is much faster than anyone thought. I mean, I know they've been talking about this for years. Now we're in the middle of it, and now we're at a point where we have to adapt, we have to respond to this or not. But that's the strange part. These things are happening right in front of us, and
Mhm.
yet people are still denying that human activity has anything to do with this, and that's just absurd. But then you have in the States, you have a demographic that can believe anything, apparently, and believe that the election was stolen, as one example. I mean, there's no evidence for it, but you have a lot of people who, for one reason or another, buy into it. So I think this is it's a kind of a sad commentary on the way that we can fool ourselves, and that's unfortunate, because we need people that can look at the reality and acknowledge that it's real and then think clearly about it. So all
Mhm.
this social media stuff that muddies the picture is not helpful, and yet it's just, it's the meme sphere. You just have to deal with it.
Well, there's I think a lot of distrust in general right now, right?
Yeah.
There's a, one side distrusts the other. A lot of people distrust the media. The world distrusts the American media. It's a fact.
Yeah.
And the media is, well, it's run by corporations who have agendas, and they're in bed with politicians who have agendas, and the message and the narrative that comes out has been shown to be at least influenced by forces that have agendas. So,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of distrust in general, but then at the same time, when it comes to something like climate change or anything else, it's like, do people authentically not believe it's happening, or are they just denying it because they don't want to accept the implications of what would need to be done if it is happening, right? Like, if there's like, okay, well, we can just say that it's not happening because that means we don't have to do anything, even though it might
Right.
be happening, and even though they might believe and know that it's happening. It's like, um well, if we just keep up this narrative, then we don't have to do anything about it, or we can just delay it and push it. And I think that's actually been proven, right? Like, there have been organizations that have sponsored fake science to create confusion around climate change in particular.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, there is a lot of deliberate misinformation about this, but if you look at what's happening on the global scale with these extreme weather events, uh, I mean, you'd have to be a fool to say it's not
Yeah.
happening. I mean, this is equivalent to saying COVID doesn't exist. It's all a hoax. Well, there are 20 million dead people who would disagree with that strongly. you know, it's real. Climate change is real. But we're monkeys, Daniel, and we're very good at denial and delusion. That's the problem, and that's been the problem of our species for a long time. And, I mean, for hundreds of years, really. One way that societies, react to crises, to apocalypse, extinction level events, is to deny it's happening.
Hmm.
But that's no solution, because the next thing you
Easter
know,
Island.
you turn around and they're gone, because they didn't wake up. And you're familiar with my shtick, which has always been, we got to wake up, as a
Yeah.
species. We have to wake up. And that's why I think we're so dedicated to ayahuasca and these other psychedelics, particularly ayahuasca, because ayahuasca is a catalyst to help us wake up to what's happening, But it's one thing to wake up. Then the next thing is, what do you do once you wake up? You have to wise up. You have to, you know, in the light of what you realized, what do we do now? What do we do next? And that's the tricky part. I don't know, but it's important that people recognize that this is a crisis. There's never been anything like it, and you know, in the history of the world. And you know, if we don't get our act together, we're not going to be around much longer. Current projections. I was just reading an article. I think it was in the New York Times. It was kind of a contemporary, uh, a contemporary review of the state of the world that came out of the organization, the Limits to Growth. And looking at their projections, they're saying, basically by 2040, uh, there'll be more or less complete civilizational collapse on the global scale.
Hmm.
So this is not a happy scenario, but yet we are seeing it,
Yes.
like on the West Coast. What are you going to do when Southern California and Arizona and these places run out of water, as they are already,
Yeah.
and 40 million climate refugees, invade Canada because they have no other place to go? Not that things are that much better in Canada if you look, climatically. If you look at this
BC.
latest spate
Yeah.
of heat waves, Canada was hit very hard. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I guess there's lots to be concerned about.
What's your take on this recent disclosure by the government of all these different events with unexplainable aerial phenomena? And do you believe that we're being visited by extraterrestrials? And do they have any part to play? If so, do they have any part to play in this slow burn apocalypse that we're undergoing?
I think, for all the hype that was around this anticipated report, that the government was going to release, I mean, it was a big nothing burger, Dan. I mean, they basically said what they've been saying for years, which is, yes, these things are real. Whatever it is, they're a real thing, and we have no idea what they actually are. And they're very quick to dismiss that they are alien spacecraft or transdimensional, or because they really don't know. Nobody knows. What you have is a bunch of fuzzy videos and things acting anomalously, and there's not much data, and so for the government to say, well, these things are happening, there are these unexplained aerial phenomena, but we're pretty sure it's not aliens. I mean, how can they even say that?
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose it's to not alarm people. I don't actually, I don't know what to think about it. Frankly, I think that I have my doubts that it's aliens. I mean, very much so. I think it's, I have no idea, frankly.
Do you
But
think they would water it down if they did have an indication that it was extraterrestrial spacecraft? Would they water it down?
I'm sure they'd water it down. Yeah. And that may be why this report, basically has no information. I mean, the report didn't reveal anything that we didn't already know. These videos have been around for a long time, and like I say, for all the hype around the release of this report, it turned out to be not much. I think, you know, I just, whatever it is, it's kind of a sideshow. I don't think
Interesting.
that the UFOs are gonna save us. I mean, even I mean, the alien space brothers are not coming to save our ass. Not anytime soon. They may take a look at it and say, these monkeys, they're not even worth saving. So it's hard to say. I don't see that that's having any impact. Uh, on the situation, but it's another example of our ability to engage in this collective delusion. I mean, as a species and as a society, delusions are comforting. That's why people have them, because they apparently insulate you from the truth. Whatever the truth is. I mean, it's hard to see through all the murk to see what the truth might be. So I don't know. It's just another thing to ponder, I suppose.
So this one's on us then. We got to figure out
Pretty
how to
much, I
navigate
think
the
we have
apocalypse.
to. I think we have to figure this one out. Nobody's coming to save our ass. It's. I mean, Jesus ain't coming. The alien brothers aren't coming. It's up to us. And that is quite scary because we're not stepping up to the plate and doing it. How far? How extreme does it have to get before enough people realize? Gee, this is really happening. We have to do something about this. By that time, it's too late. I mean,
Do you think
this is
we
a
need a full
conversation we
scale?
should have had 30 years ago. If
Well, we
not
did
earlier.
really,
We
right?
did, and then everybody
Nobody did
forgot.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think we actually need a full scale collapse or like 90% collapse to actually wake up and reorganize?
Well, it's. I mean, we may well need that. I mean, that's a kind of a. That's a kind of a downer kind of thing to say. People expect our message to be optimistic and uplifting and all that, but in fact, this may be what has to happen. Before we do wake up. I do not worry so much about life on Earth surviving. I think
Mhm.
life on Earth will survive. Life is very resilient. Our species is not so resilient. And it may just be, that the community of life, the biosphere, Gaia, whatever you want to call it, may be reaching a point where it just comes to the realization that, this monkey thing is a bad experiment, you know,
Hmm.
and we need to bring it to an end, whatever, to ensure the survival of life on the planet uh, in some form, you know. So it's hard to say what's going to happen, but it's pretty clear that within our lifetime, and you're much younger than I am, so maybe not within my lifetime, but soon we're going to have to face the fact that large parts of the planet are going to be uninhabitable. It won't happen everywhere at once, but it's beginning to happen. And as these fires and so on spread, it's you know it has a great impact, and the planet doesn't have it seems like there are no opportunities to slow things down. So massive collapse on a global scale would certainly slow things down, and maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe ultimately that will be seen as a beneficial thing. But the problem on the other side of that equation is millions will die, and billions potentially will die if it gets bad enough. And that's a pretty dire prospect to think about. But nobody asked us what to think about it. It's just this is what we're faced with. So and often, I mean, I maybe I shouldn't even say this, but in my ayahuasca experiences, of late, I mean, I haven't had any basically since all the COVID came, because my last one. But for a while there, I've been getting these pretty dark scenarios on my ayahuasca experiences, and these sort of apocalyptic scenarios. And you know, I don't, and that, I don't know why that is, except that I do think that these psychedelics are sending a message, and the message is getting kind of dark.
Well, I mean, I guess that's why you're so passionate about what you do at the academy, right? And that's what drives you with the academy: the love for the planet, the love for the plants, the love for the medicines, and the message that they send. And
Yeah, it is. It is why I'm driven to do what I do. It's what you're driven to do, what you do, and a lot of us in the psychedelic space, are motivated by this. That psychedelics are a catalyst to help us understand how far out of alignment with nature we've gotten, how estranged we've become from nature, and hopefully to heal that and bring us more into line. But we have to uh, come to some realizations. I mean, I think it's like, what do you do? You just keep doing the best you can. You keep doing what you're doing. I keep doing what I'm doing. maybe you have to hope that that's making a difference. That's
Well, I promised you that we wouldn't go much longer than an hour today. So,
well. Now
what's
that we've said enough to bum everybody out,
the last podcast was like 5 hours long, and you actually had to tell me that you needed to leave. So, anyway, so why not close out on what's next on your agenda with the academy? What are you getting up to in the near future? When are you going back to start doing retreats in Peru? When are you coming back to Soltara? And how are people going to participate in your life?
well, I'm not sure about any of these things. One thing we are doing that's coming right up is we're actually working with the one of our projects we're working with is with the Organization for Tropical Studies, which is based in Costa Rica. You may have had some connection with them. We're working on developing a virtual online course in ethnobotany that's going to be quite a good course. I think it'll be a graduate level course, and it'll be something that anyone anywhere can sign up for. And
in Costa Rica.
Well, the Organization for Tropical Studies is based in Costa Rica. Yeah, but this will be an online collaboration with them that will be taught by my colleague Michael Coe, who just got his PhD a couple of years ago studying cultural keystone species in Peru, and that was mainly ayahuasca. He'll be the instructor, but we have some high profile guest lectures, and I think it'll be a great course. So this is just part of our mission is to help people appreciate plants and plant wisdom and that kind of thing. So we're doing that. We have this long-term project planned, this digital herbarium project, and as to retreats, uh, we don't know. Maybe this summer we'll be able to do some retreats in Peru. Maybe I can come to Soltara in the spring. I've been talking to Melissa about when I might show up. I do hope to get down there sometime after the first of the year. I can't tell you when, but definitely want to come back. You deserve a lot of credit, Daniel, for keeping the place open and operational in the face of all these challenges. I if I had a hat, I would tip it to you.
Well, it's actually not me who deserves the credit. It's the people who I chose to follow
Right.
that for one educated me on preparing for events like this because they happen regularly. And if you think, it's 5 or 6 or 7 years since the last one, you feel like everything's good in the world and you can get caught with your pants down. So that was the one thing, was just preparing for something and trying to push, when we were in the red zone, trying to push to get out of the red zone as quickly as possible. And then making some hard decisions during the progression of the lockdowns, which were at times not popular. But then again, following the people that I followed, Patrick Bet-David was a big one, Grant Cardone another one. Brian Rose is also very helpful to me in some of the encouraging things that he had to share with me through the pandemic. So, it's really about the knowledge that you get and the things you choose to learn that are the precursors to all the decisions you make. So I really
Right.
don't take credit for that. I give the credit to those guys, because without those guys, we might have just, we only hung on by a thread too. So,
Mhm.
it wasn't like we thrived throughout the 7
No,
month
no.
zero revenue,
Well, you
but
can give credit to them, but you should take a good deal of it yourself because you had the vision and you stuck it out, and that's the main thing. Half of it is showing up. and so you've done that. I think Soltara, I hope all these people spam calling me. Uh, uh, yeah, I mean, you had the clarity of the vision to see the future, see where it's going and how it might develop. So we just have to, like everything else in life, we'll have to say we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
All right, sir. Well, thank you very much for making the time on a Friday afternoon. I'm sure our audience and our Soltara community are going to be very, very happy to hear from you yet again. And you did a recent podcast on Tim Ferriss that hasn't come out yet, though.
I did. It will be released next week sometime.
Well, that's just a double Dennis burger right there for the audience, right?
Yes.
Well, we might even get. Would you prefer if we release it after the Tim Ferriss episode or on this about the same time?
Why don't you hold off till after the Tim Ferriss episode and then follow on a week later or something like that? But do it with your own schedule. But yeah, we're excited about that. I think there'll be it's going to get a lot of notice. Hopefully, it will stimulate donations and support. And Tim Ferriss is great. I uh, really enjoyed the interview. He's an excellent interviewer. I should probably. I'm sure you'd like me to recommend you, and I'd be happy to. So yeah, definitely.
That would be fantastic. I'm a huge fan of Tim Ferriss. He's been pivotal in my own journey.
Oh yeah.
And I've credited the existence of Soltara to him because it was his first book that really sent me on my own entrepreneurial journey and changed the way I thought about life and work and travel and everything like that. So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. If you guys had a good conversation and you feel like you can put in a good word, that would be amazing.
I would feel comfortable doing that. Not a problem. But then he may not, respond to it. It's hard
Of
to
course.
say.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Joe Rogan. People are always asking me, "Can you get me on Joe Rogan?" Well, I don't have an inside track,
Yeah.
and nobody I've recommended to Joe that they come on, he's never paid any attention to it. So,
Right. Yeah.
but Tim seems more open and certainly happy to mention it. And, I'm proud of our association. I mean, I feel like Soltara is doing their best, doing the right thing in very difficult times. So,
Well, there's also, some other mutual friends in the mix there. So I'm sure he's probably heard my name at some point or the other through Kyle Kingsbury or Aubrey Marcus or
for sure.
anybody, those guys, So anyways, just wayward comment, but I'm sure it'll all work out as planned. It'll all work out in the end, and we're all going to be just a big, happy community of good friends, all trying to make their mark and change the world, right? So
doing our best. Sometimes I just have to remind myself, whatever is happening, this is the universe unfolding exactly the way it's supposed to be. So I take reassurance in that, So
right on. So how are people finding you and the academy? If you're obviously you accept donations, it's a nonprofit, right?
Yes.
And
we can accept donations of all kinds, including cryptocurrency. I think they're setting that up. So just go to www.mckenna.academy and we'll all be there for you. And you can look at our events and resources and so on. All of these events are recorded. So in most cases, even if they're months old, you can still watch these events. So yeah, there's a lot of material there, and we're adding material all the time. So,
and you're on Facebook, not Instagram.
We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. I've got people and maybe a couple others, but those are the three. Fortunately, I don't have to handle the social media, but we've got people doing that and making the posts. So yes, we're on all those platforms. So,
and how do people? What's the handle on those platforms? Just McKenna Academy.
yeah, just search on McKenna Academy and it'll come up.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, my friends.
All
Well,
right.
thank you again so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Great to see you and to hear from you and get an update.
Yeah,
It's been a while. So,
it has been a while. You're looking well.
well, me and Jesse, we just recorded our debut album. We made a rock / metal album here in Costa Rica with one of our old guitar heroes from the 90s came down to produce an album for us. So, we've been hitting the gym and trying to get all buff because we got a photo shoot tomorrow, and we're gonna start touring the world and playing some music. So,
Oh, that's great, Daniel.
we've got our health and we've got our happiness.
That's can't do better than that.
The Daniel Cleland Podcast.
Thank you so much, my friends, for checking out the Daniel Cleland Podcast. We love you and appreciate you. If you liked what you saw, please like, subscribe, share it up with your friends and loved ones who might benefit from these episodes. And if you'd like to check out more episodes, we've got some links conveniently placed over there. So check it out, share it up. And until next time, be well. Much love to you. Thank you so much.